Welcome, everybody, to What the Tech, episode 81. I'm Andrew Zarian, joined by
Me.
the man with the collared shirt, Paul Thurrott.
It's still blue.
It's still blue. Windows blue, and the background is blue for the feed. I have a blue image going on, so we're going with the blue theme. I'm once again wearing a button-down shirt. I don't know if that has anything to do with you wearing a collar shirt today, Paul.
I appreciate you dressing up for me.
I do. Unfortunately, the truth is I'm dressing up to go to a meeting afterwards at Carmine's, but I'm still dressing up for you.
Thank you.
You could think that. I'm going to start telling people that. I'm going to start telling this is the only show I dress up for.
It's
Paul demands it of me.
I don't mind appearing on this thing, but could you do something
the
way you look?
Listen, that AC/DC shirt and those Groucho Marx eyebrows, they're not working for me. Please do something.
It's nothing personal, but...
Yeah, it was a busy week in tech already. This Google news has been shattering in many ways. It really it's very interesting that they did this. I'm not surprised they did this. What I'm surprised at is that it took them so long to do this.
Thank you. That's exactly my point.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Is that your point?
Really
okay. I'm actually surprised.
I've come to this sort of rolling conclusion over time that Google has entered this market, I think, in an illegal fashion, the one that the United States government still needs to investigate, has achieved great market share. And they've got to be the only company making a smartphone mobile OS that isn't paying licensing fees to anyone else.
Yeah.
They're the only ones. And their product is outselling almost the rest of the market combined. It's getting to that point. When Google complained about the cartel or cabal or whatever they call them, the companies like Apple and Microsoft and so forth that bought the Nortel patents a few weeks ago, I looked at that complaint and I thought, we're complaining about the wrong thing here. I mean, the problem here isn't Microsoft and Apple and the other companies, it's Google. Here they are dominating this market. They're not paying a cent. And because they're not paying a cent, Android goes out the door absolutely free. They're essentially dumping it. And, my contention of, as it's sort of grown as I've looked into this has been that, they need to pay. And I think essentially by buying Motorola, Motorola Mobility.
Mobility, not solutions.
Not solutions. That is how they pay, because Motorola owns 17,000 patents, many of which are related directly to the mobile industry. And thus now they have that patent.
It's pretty much, And there are different reasons, and a lot of people saying, well, it's for this, it's for that, it's for having a dedicated device, and look at all these. And we're going to run through a lot of them, but in my opinion, I think it's only for the patents.
I think it's only for the patents. In fact, I fully expect within a year or two that they just dump the hardware part of it.
Really?
And I don't mean just get rid of it. I mean, maybe they sell it off or spin it off or however they do it. But it doesn't make sense in an open ecosystem like Google's to have one special partner that's owned by the company. You can't sell something and then license it so others can sell it. That never works. It just doesn't work. And that's why Microsoft didn't buy Nokia, I think. I mean, other than the fact that Nokia probably wasn't interested in selling at the time. But.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of things. I mean, do you think the Nokia and Microsoft deal had something to do with the purchase on a hardware level? I mean, if let's ignore the patents. Let's say the patents aren't the reason, which they are, but there are a lot of people saying, well, no, it's the hardware. Why wouldn't they want a hardware phone? Why wouldn't they want to get into the hardware game? And I said, why would they want to? Because
that's exactly why would they?
They're hurting their own. What's going to happen to HTC? What's going to happen to Samsung? If Google now has Motorola hardware, which they do, and let's say they make Motorola the Google phone, are they going to treat HTC and Samsung and everybody else that has a Google device the same? I don't think so. Why would you?
Listen, I actually, for all the stuff that I've complained about Android over the past couple of weeks, the thing I do agree with that they do is every year they pick one phone or one partner to make the Google phone, and what this allows them to do is have a special pure device, which I think is important because there is a certain segment of the population that wants that stuff. They don't want all the carrier junk on there. They want it to be
I'm one of those people. I'm one of those. I don't want
I would imagine a lot of
UI.
people listening to this or fall into this category. The nice thing is it allows them to kind of cherry pick the hardware maker, and it keeps them from having to know how to make that stuff work on the hardware side. Why would they care? Google's primary directive is to feed people through its search engine, which generates a lot of sales through advertising. owning a hardware company does not achieve this goal in the slightest. They didn't, they don't. There's no such thing. Even though there's a Google branded Google TV, it's really made by Samsung, I think, or Logitech, or
Logitech and Sony, and they have a number of
yeah.
partners.
But I think the Google one, is like I think that's the Logitech one, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know, but it doesn't make sense for them to have a part of their company that makes hardware, set-top boxes. It doesn't make sense. Their plan to license the OS is a good one. It's the same one that Microsoft essentially.
Well, isn't this the same argument that people have? For Microsoft, it doesn't make sense for Microsoft to make hardware. Yeah, they have the Xbox, but they never made it. They're not making a computer. They're not making the phone. And why would they want to when they could get someone like Nokia to be a major partner in the development of this? The future of the OS.
Yeah, there's an argument to be made that Android is heading for a problem because of fragmentation and so forth. There's so many different phones, different capabilities, different OS versions.
Do you feel that? Do you feel that it is headed towards that?
I feel a little less like that than I did before this thing, but yeah, I mean, that obviously that's a problem. This is the part of what was wrong with Windows Mobile that Microsoft didn't do this time. They worked the spec such that for Windows Phone, these devices are all enough alike that people aren't going to be stranded, which I think was very smart. I do think this is going to be a problem for Google, except for one thing. Think about how the market has matured. Phones are commodities. When your phone contract comes up, I don't mean you personally, but you as a normal human being, like a normal American, you walk into your wireless carrier, whoever it is, and you look at what's available, and then you buy a phone. And then you forget about it for 2 more years. And in that world, fragmentation doesn't matter that much because those people are just buying a thing. And they're not thinking of it like you and I think of it, which is that phone is in some ways frozen in time. And because it's running Android OS version 2.2, that means it doesn't have certain capabilities that are in 2.3. And maybe it never will because we know a little bit too much about the industry and how these things work.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's a big deal for most people, to be honest. So maybe not, simply because, and on the other hand, I don't think there's a lot of, I don't know what the right word is, but loyalty to Android. I think for these same people, even if they had an Android phone, my wife, like you, had that first Droid, and when her phone fell apart, she went to Verizon and she looked at what was available. And she talked to me, obviously, but it was not a guarantee that she was going to end up with an Android phone.
Do you think that the reason why there's no loyalty towards Android is because I'm sure some people are loyal towards Android, but I'm talking about the regular person. It's because there's no set identity of Android. I mean, LG and Samsung and HTC and Motorola, they're all putting out an Android device. So yeah, I could see how there could be no loyalty.
There's no loyalty at all to a manufacturer for the most part. I'm speaking very generally. Obviously, there are exceptions. In other words, you owned a Motorola Droid. Does that mean the next phone's a Motorola Droid?
Probably not.
Probably not. It could be, but probably not.
Yeah.
Does it mean it's an Android phone? It could be. Probably not. But the reason there's no loyalty is because Android currently doesn't have the kind of lock-in that favors the Apple stuff. So, for example, when you own an Apple iPhone, you don't necessarily, this is, again, not everybody, but just generally speaking, obviously you buy apps and they only work on the iPhone, but you also have all that content. If you bought anything, TV shows, movies, whatever, or if you use iTunes and you're just invested in all that stuff, you manage your collection with that. It's hard to move off of that to something else. Typical Android user, I don't know how many apps that people actually download, but if it's less than 10, who cares?
Well, let's see.
By the way,
I'm not a typical user, and let's see how many apps I have. I'll tell you right now. Are we going to count Facebook and Twitter?
No, because those are easily replicated. In fact, arguably, you might even argue that the only big deals are the ones that you paid for. And then you can put the phone down because there's like 2 of those, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
I'm going to be honest. Dropbox.
Yep.
That I've Google Remote, which I don't use, so I could get rid of that. Gtalk, but that doesn't count because that's included. ROM speed test, and then the rest is all ROM stuff for Cyanogen for the thing. I actually have no apps here.
People have things like Foursquare and Facebook and all that stuff. They have games, but again, depending on your needs and your wants and all that stuff. I mean, I think a lot of people experiment with games. They play a couple of games, and then they move on. So, first of all, Angry Birds is available on every phone, whatever. I mean, I think at some point you reach the conclusion, right? You're done with this game. We're not going to do this anymore. It doesn't matter. So I'm really not sure lock-in is working for Google yet. like maybe it should. I think this is
it's a
one of the
numbers
big
game for them right
advantages.
now. I honestly feel that it's a numbers game, and they're just bloating. Every week there's a new stat, and I feel that I've heard that Android has grabbed the market share since it came out. But that's not a true analysis of the market. If you're putting out the device on every single manufacturer, I don't feel that that's a true. I don't know.
Everyone's needs are different.
Yeah,
obviously, but
and not everything is running the latest version. Some devices are just junk devices, and some devices are good devices. I feel the problem with Android is it's so scattered and it's so all over the place.
So iffy. I don't. There is something off about Android that I really don't appreciate. Some people may be shocked by this, but when my wife's phone purchase came up, I said to her, well, I said two things about the iPhone. One was, this is a tough time to buy an iPhone because Apple's getting ready to replace it at any time now. But then again, for someone like her, who cares? But the other one was, I said to her, you should just get an iPhone. We already own lots and lots of apps that you can tie into your phone. We know how iTunes works. We know all the contents there. Whatever. She was not interested in that personally, for her. But I still feel like for most people that an iPhone is a better buy than an Android phone. Generally speaking, it just feels more, I'm not even sure what the right term is, meaningful, more solid. I don't know.
I explained to somebody once, and my mother-in-law had a Droid, and she finally left and got an iPhone. And I said, listen, for me, she goes, why don't you have an iPhone? I said, I already have an iPod Touch, and I have to be in all the environments. I can't just have one, because if I'm commenting on Android and I keep saying it sucks, I feel that I should be using, or I should have used it, and I should know what's going on. So,
absolutely, yeah.
So I have an Android phone, and I complain about it, and I like some aspects, but I don't need an iPhone. For my wife, I told her get an iPhone. She goes, why? Why not stay with the Android? What's the difference? I told my mother-in-law, and I said, I'll explain this to you in the simplest way. And you were saying how Android is off. Something is off, and you can't figure it out. Let's imagine if Android, if they were people, and the iPhone is a person.
Yeah.
And you took a bat and you hit the iPhone in the back of the head. When they came back from the hospital, something might be a little off.
Yep.
That's Android.
That's it. That's good. Okay.
That's how I describe Android to people. It's very similar in many ways, but it's off. It takes a couple seconds for it to say, okay, this is what you're trying to do. When I try to make a phone call, there are times that it takes me an unbelievable long time to make a phone call, and I feel that that's not normal.
No, that's
with
true.
any phone. I mean, when I'm trying to send a text message, the steps are a little too long for me to send a text message at times. And I think the iPhone has done a great job at making it simple. I haven't really used Windows Mobile. Wow, I have used Windows Mobile. I haven't used Windows Phone 7 for an extensive amount of time, so I can't really comment on it. But I feel that you have to make it simple.
Windows Phone right now for me as something I could just recommend without caveat. I mean, the reason I didn't for my wife, which she quizzed me about, was that the phones, the cameras are all terrible, all of them.
Yeah.
There isn't a single Windows phone on the market that has a good camera. That's one of the nice things. The iPhone has a great camera, and several of the Android phones have great cameras. So I think for a lot of people who buy a smartphone, that's a big part of the experience. It's one of the reasons why they want it. And that's the one area right now. There's no reason there couldn't be one on Windows Phone. It just so happens with those first gen devices, there aren't any.
Yeah.
They're all really lousy.
Yeah. How about, let's talk about what it's going to mean to hardware, other hardware coming out. People have been saying, I've been reading the blogs, this is going to be a great time for Google TV and set-top boxes, because there are many set-top boxes out there.
Yeah.
That Motorola, their Motorola boxes running a crummy operating system that barely works. Fios is one of them, right? Fios has Motorola boxes. Can this potentially mean Google TV on these set-top boxes? And I don't think that's mobility. I think that's solutions.
Yep, that's a different thing.
Totally, that's out of the question. I mean, listen, it could happen.
I think it's irrelevant. I mean, I would like the software in the Fios box to be better. It's terrible.
But not Google TV.
I don't want it to be Google TV, which is also terrible, by the way. I hate, not to keep harping on the Apple thing, but Apple has obviously iOS devices, and then they have Apple TV, which may or may not be based on iOS. I'm not even sure. It doesn't matter because the interface is not the same. The interface to Apple TV today does not look like the iPad or the iPhone or the iPod Touch. It looks like something completely different. Now, it may in the future change to something where you can actually play games on it or whatever, but today, not so much. That's okay because these devices are not the same kind of thing. I don't need to play Angry Birds on my TV set. In fact, I'm getting really tired of Angry Birds. Now that we're on that
I think
subject.
everybody's tired of Angry Birds.
Yeah, it's on too many things.
When they have the live action movie come out, you know it's jumped the shark.
Right.
I'm just waiting for that.
From the guys that brought you Super Mario Brothers.
Yeah. John Leguizamo will be in this one as well.
Yeah, yes, right. So I just think it doesn't matter because they're different things. The only one who would benefit from Android being on a set-top box is Google. I mean, I guess what I'm trying to say is, generally speaking, I wish Motorola's set-top box was better. It could certainly be a lot better. But if that thing's running Android or some Microsoft software or the Apple TV software or whatever it could run, fantastic. Any of those would be fine. It doesn't. There's no ecosystem benefit to that thing running Android.
No.
Not to me. Not to normal people, I don't think.
I don't know. Would a normal person like that? I think a normal person just wants to click and watch their on-demands and that's it. And,
you know what?
Turn it off.
We bought this Vizio TV, and it has a Vizio button on it, and it brings up this Yahoo widget thing. Have you seen one of these?
Yeah.
My wife likes it because it has Netflix in there, and what this means to her is she can access Netflix without changing the input on the TV, which she finds to be confusing.
See, that's why I like Google TV, and that's why Jess likes Google TV, because you don't have to change the input.
So that's a benefit. But that's Netflix. Netflix is sort of a rich service that my wife understands and likes. The other stuff that's on there, you can log on to your Facebook account, your Twitter account. There is a weather widget and all this other stuff. Nobody cares about this stuff. It's the type of stuff you once log into and look at, and then you say, yeah, that's cute. We'll never do that again. We use this for Netflix. You know, that button has turned into a Netflix button.
Yeah,
You know?
and I think that's what it means to a lot of people. I don't think anybody's using this extra garbage that's on the TVs.
Yeah. So I think we've just explained why Android on a set-top box
does not work. Yeah. How about let's say now let's put the hypothetical that and so far I haven't seen anything that leads me to believe that they're going to kill Motorola phone hardware. I mean, that's just our guess right now. But let's say that they do make Motorola the go-to phone. I would be really pissed off if I'm HTC.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, imagine it's so evil. So it would be something Google would do if you think about it. But they create this open platform. They license it to anyone on Earth with a heartbeat. Everyone creates devices. They go out on every single wireless carrier on Earth, and then they yank it back in. I don't anticipate that happening. But I have to say, from the perspective of someone like you who is more interested in the pure Google experience.
Yes. And
Google is, they're a strange company. You could almost picture them wanting this and just saying, I don't damn the consequences. We want our users to have this pure Google experience.
Yeah.
We know this is going to bite some people bad, but too bad. That's an interesting outcome. I mean.
But now isn't it in Google's interest to make sure Motorola phones do better and have better hardware and have better software? I'm just trying to think. Let's say I produced a show here on the network. You and I did a show, and then I had another show on somebody else's network that they may or may not have stolen from me through iTunes. Sorry. Hold on. That's getting too close. But let's say there was another show that I worked on, but that didn't belong to me. I really wouldn't care as much about that show as I would for something that is mine.
Right, well, here's right now, there are Google licensees or Android licensees for the phone, some of which are doing very well. And they're innovating. They're competing with each other as well as with the rest of the market. So they're always trying to one-up each other. You get into this weird situation where lots of different Android-based phones are coming out all the time. Now there's this Google OS coming out, or is out, Android Honeycomb 4 tablets. A bunch of guys also trying to do the same thing. Now those so far have not taken off in the same way. There's been some stumbling there and so forth. there's an argument to be made that if they could, if they being Google could rein this thing in, that they could get on top of this tablet thing maybe. The other thing is, what about Amazon, which has successfully created its own Android App Store market, right? That can supplant the one that Google supplies.
Yeah, it's to me it's a little bit more organized than what Google's doing.
Yeah, I like it. I like it better by far. Reportedly coming out with their own tablet. Amazon is the one company that could actually wrest control of Android away from Google, in the sense that they will become the most important Android company, because they, like Apple, have the App Store and the content store. They have the delivery mechanism. They've been doing this for years. They understand it. They own and can sell and rent TV shows and movies.
But see, this is interesting. Why and how would Amazon be better at this than someone like Motorola and HTC and Samsung that are in the hardware game? Why
Because
would they do
they're
better?
not in the hardware game. They're in the content delivery game.
Yeah, and they know a little bit something about content delivery.
I think that this is the thing. You know, when I said that people who own Android devices don't necessarily have that lock-in, it's because this aspect of that ecosystem is lacking right now. When Amazon comes out with this device, assuming they do, as expected, you know, all of a sudden you have that one thing that could compete with the iPad. But from Android's perspective, from Google's perspective, it's usurping their control over their own ecosystem. It's a little strange. I mean, so if Android, I'm sorry, there's so many words here. So many words, so many texts. If Google were to rein in Android and take it back, make it proprietary, and stop licensing it, right? Or do something odd where they only license the previous version or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they could really kill the third-party Android market, but then they would also harm a company like Amazon, which wouldn't be able to compete as effectively anymore.
Yeah.
Right? That would really hurt them a lot. You know, as of today, it looks like Amazon is the only company that can come in and do what I just described. But what if Google took away Android? That would be impossible.
I think, you know, I don't see them taking it away, but I do see them. You're right in one sense. They would say, okay, listen, you're not Motorola. So what you're going to get is Android 3.0, while we're putting out 3.2, 3.4, whatever the next generation is, on all these other devices. So you could still have Android.
Yeah.
You'll just have a different experience than having an official Motorola Google phone.
That's a risky strategy.
It is risky, but they've been doing it, right? They've been doing that. How many phones are out on the market still running Android 1.6?
Well, right. So the couple of Android phones that Google has made, or the Nexus phones, haven't sold well, right? Motorola's phones sell pretty well. I think they're the second biggest maker of Android phones, if I'm not mistaken.
The problem is actually those Google phones that they make, they don't market them.
Right.
It's almost like a secret phone that Google has for themselves. You never see it marketed like you see Motorola and all those, other phones.
That was, like I said, that was what I liked about that strategy. I hope they still do that. And not, use Motorola as their special partner that gets stuff early and has unique capabilities that aren't available to the other guys. That's very contrary to the whole point of Android and contrary to the promise of Android. Now,
the other side of this acquisition is purchases that Microsoft was interested in Motorola.
Mm-hmm.
And Microsoft, and you tell me if I'm wrong, it would be just for patents.
Yeah.
Right? They're protecting themselves.
Oh, yeah.
It's crazy how the patent stuff has become such a major story. And look at a company like Google. They're purchasing another large company, Motorola, Mobility, just for that purpose.
Well,
and again, this is my opinion. I don't know. I could be wrong.
No, you're right. No, you're absolutely right.
And it's just for patents.
Yeah. Well, you say just for patents, but but patents are very valuable.
Yeah. But I think the value of patents, and if we're going to make it into a stock analysis, have gone up.
Yes.
Since Apple started going after everybody. It's become I'm sure it's gone on for years, but these patent lawsuits, but it's become headline over the last, let's say 2 years.
Obviously, there's a lot of feeling out that's occurred, and as this market has matured and grown, the relevance of these patents has also matured and grown. And I think that, these companies started going after the small guys, the Android licensees first. And then they started winning, not in the sense that there was a court case where they, got to win in court, but rather that these companies looked at the information that was available and said, we're just going to pay these guys. We're going to pay to cross-license patents because that just made more sense financially. And as you win and win against these smaller companies, eventually you start looking toward that big kahuna, which is Google. And the reason you don't go after Google right away is because Google could keep you in court for the rest of your lives.
Oh yeah, they just bought $18.5 billion. What is it? 18 billion? 18.5 billion? What's the exact amount?
I think the price of Motorola.
Yeah,
I think it was 12.5.
12.5 billion. Yeah, 12.5. Quadrillion, trillion times 5, whatever.
They could spend that much every month.
They can. Because they're generating that kind of revenue. I mean,
would you like to go to court? Sure. How long do you expect to live, by the way? Because this case is going to drag out. That's the type of thing Google has vast resources. So,
do you feel that, and this has been coming up, do you feel that we need patent reform in this country?
Yes. Although, yes, absolutely. I mean, there are a lot of things that are patented that are just crazy, general. A lot of patents where you look at them and they're not what they say they are, that kind of thing.
Podcasting is patented. Somebody owns the rights to that.
Sure. Well, the interesting thing about patents, maybe the most interesting thing, is that a lot of the stuff has not been tested in court effectively. And I think a lot of patents would be thrown out if they were tested in court. So it's kind of a high stakes game that you're playing when you have patents and you're trying to, convince other people to pay to use that patented technology. But yeah, I guess all I'd say about whether this needs to be reformed is simply that's sort of a side discussion. It's obviously a related discussion. Mm-hmm. As it stands now, these companies need to compete in the market in which exists today. And in this market, patented technologies. I mean, this is not anything new.
No.
Apple and Microsoft were involved in a patent lawsuit for a decade or more, I think, back in the late 1980s to mid 1990s, and it involved Windows. I mean, the most popular PC software program ever written. So
it is interesting how I mean, this was a big surprise to me, and I know that Motorola has been in trouble for some time. They had a very long period of time that they were not selling devices, and even with the Droid, it showed that they needed an escape. And Motorola needed to bail out. I mean, they were just not doing so well.
Well,
I don't know if this was the right thing. I don't know if Google was the right person for them to sell to. I mean, would it have been better if it was a small, a privately owned company, but who has, $12.5 billion right now?
There are examples of big and small companies not doing well with this kind of purchase, so it's hard to say. HP hasn't done spectacularly well with WebOS and may never do well with WebOS. Nokia and or RIM, which are major companies, much, much bigger than Motorola, could be up for sale within the next year, could be gone. I think consolidation is a natural part of this. If anything, the Android market is too big. There are too many phones. Too many people or companies making phones that come out too frequently, and then are replaced too quickly. It's like this never-ending churn. I mean, I'm not saying Google wants to or will do this, but I mean, just taking Motorola out of the market might be not such a horrible idea. Just to get that bit of it out. I mean, you could open up a tech blog and any given day read about a new Google or Android phone coming down the pike.
But even if they do, slowing down the release of these phones, I think that's going to have to be the future of this device, and in order to keep the consumer loyal. They were talking. I was listening to a couple of people talking about the iPad, and if there should be 2 phones a year, and how they're going to do the cycle, and if Apple releases the new iPad, what is that going to do to consumers? I'm going to say the consumer's going to be really pissed off, because if I just bought an iPad in March, in April, whatever the release was, and if there's another one that comes out that's better than mine, you know what? I'm going to be a little ticked off, and I'm going to say, that's kind of sucks that I spent $600 on this device, and now a new one is out less than a year later.
It's worse for a phone because you're also sucked into that 2-year contract with a phone, and then to break that contract to get a new phone, you pay hundreds of dollars extra. So that's a tough proposition. If anything, Apple is moving in the opposite direction. They were on a yearly cycle there for 4 years in a row, I guess, 3-4 years in a row. Mm-hmm. And they're clearly moving to something that's more along the lines of 18 months for the phone.
Which I think that's great. That is smart. That's great. And that makes me feel a lot better about buying the product.
And I also think it's a natural maturation thing. When you look at Mac OS 10, they were on a yearly cycle for a while. Then it kind of went to 18 months, and then 2 years or whatever. They slowed down. They talked about it explicitly. They said, look, this thing is mature. We don't have to release something every year. There isn't really much to do anymore. Windows has a new version roughly every 3 years. There's no need for that. And smartphones are on a hyper growth schedule, which makes sense so that this would happen more quickly. So here we are 4 or 5 years into the iPhone or whatever, and it's starting to stretch out. It makes sense. I mean, how much revolution is left in the iPhone when you think about it? It already does everything you need. What is it? What's it missing exactly?
I don't, and that's the thing. And a lot of people, when they have WWDC, everybody's staring at the screen. They're attached to go, well, what's next? What are they going to do? And I keep telling people, I'm like, well, what else can they possibly do right now? They've created this great device, and a lot of people love it. And it's just small steps now. They just got to keep adding.
Yeah.
What else? I mean, battery life, that's a huge thing. So if they tell me, okay, you're going to have 15, 20 hours of battery life on this device, yeah, that's a huge step for me. For me, especially, that matters to me.
Yeah.
Maybe doesn't mean anything to you. If they say, okay, now we have flash, that may be big to somebody else. But again, that's not a huge revolutionary change in the device. I can't see what they're going to do. By the way, new update for Lion, 10.71
is out
right now. I just got the update.
Even that is slower than usual. If you go back and look over a lot of the older OS 10 releases, they updated those things very quickly. It was a little bit of an inside joke, that they would release this unfinished product into the market, and then they would update it, within a week.
Yeah.
So Lion now has been out for what, 3 weeks?
Yeah, about a month.
Month?
Yeah.
There you go.
By the way, it's a very small update, 17 megs.
I've been downloading the iOS 5 builds, right? I'm on the developer program. And, I can't say too much about that. I would say that it strikes me that some of these things are almost a gigabyte in size. 600, 700, 800 megabytes.
Yeah, that's big.
For an iOS, for an iPod Touch or an iPhone, whatever it was, OS. That's crazy how big those things are.
Yeah, that's awfully large. They're saying, let's see what the fixes are for this thing. I don't even know. Addresses an issue that causes the system to become unresponsive when playing video in Safari. Mm-hmm. I can't get Flash to work since going to Lion. Flash, this does not work properly for me. I can't. It just freezes constantly.
You use Safari?
No. I use Chrome and Firefox, and it does the same exact problem in Chrome and Firefox. So I don't know what's going on.
In the Microsoft world, they used to have this saying that Windows isn't done until Lotus 123 doesn't run.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great saying.
You have to wonder if there isn't a similar mentality going on the Apple side. They obviously can't stand the Adobe stuff anymore, which is bizarre on a number of levels because those guys were always very close partners. But
I don't know, something happened. I want to talk about Intel for a second, and this is, it's not big news, but I want to go into this. And I sent a tweet out, and in the show notes I wrote the bizarre world of Intel. And this is why I think this is bizarre. So there are two stories here for Intel this week. One is that they're releasing a new CPU, the Sandy Bridge E for enthusiasts, that will not have heat sinks or fans.
Right.
Now, I understand this. I understand that it's enthusiasts buying this, but I'm sure many people that are not enthusiasts will end up buying this because they try to go for the biggest and best thing. What's going to happen when they buy this thing? And let's say they don't know and they get someone to put it in. And I'm just coming up with crazy scenarios. And they're like, where the hell is the heatsink and the fan?
Or what happens if you add one anyway?
Well, that's what they're saying. They're saying, well, you got to put your own. And
I see.
Their weird thing is that, well,
like
most
these things
people
are going to burn up. Like people who would build their own systems know they need these things.
They need these things, yeah. And they're saying, well, most of the time people don't use the ones that we give them anyway.
That's
and
true.
They get better ones, so we're just not going to give it to you. I don't know. I don't know. I just find that a little weird. Just put it in there. What's the big deal?
It's weird for I can't explain this. I mean, we probably talked about this a long time ago. I do prefer Intel to AMD for some reason, which is bizarre because Intel has never been. I
was the opposite way.
They're a company that used to sell you extra chips so you could have like a a floating point processor that wasn't built into the processor, even though it really was built in, but they disabled it before it went out the door, and now you can buy this extra thing. They're still doing that, with some low-end Pentiums that you can buy these cards in the store that will increase the processing
Yeah, that's
power
the
of
next
thing
story,
already
which
on.
isn't that crazy? Isn't that a crazy thing?
It's sick, is what it is. It's awful.
I want to say before I got the i7, the new i7 that we used to control everything in the network, the last Intel I had was a Pentium 2. No, was it? Wait a minute. No. No, it wasn't a Pentium 2. Yes, it was a Pentium. I had a Pentium 2 Intel, and I refused to go to the Pentium 3 because they had that weird logging.
There was a cartridge thing and its own proprietary, lock and slot thing.
So I never went to that, and I went to AMD, and I fell in love with AMD for God knows what reason, and I stuck with them until until the last CPU they made, which is their 6-core T90T whatever it is, AMD,
like a Phenom or something.
Yeah, it's the Phenom X6 6-core 1090T, which is a 6-core AMD. The thing is supposed to be a beast, but unfortunately, an i7 that's half the speed performs at a better it performs better than this 6-core AMD, and I just feel that they've really fell behind in the I can't even speak anymore because I'm so upset. Performance mark. I'm so mad. You made me spend $400.
Well,
and I built machines.
They're so lousy, though.
They are.
I can't explain why I've sort of always preferred Intel to AMD for whatever reason, but AMD was the company that innovated with this x64 stuff. If they hadn't done that, the 64-bit computing future, which would probably still be in the future, would be something based on Itanium, which I think we all agree was a tremendous waste of time and money.
Yeah.
Intel ripped it off, just basically took it and made it its own thing, and okay, so here we are. But there was a story this past week where Apple actually went to Intel and said, if you don't figure out this heat and power management stuff, we're leaving you. Make it happen. And Intel described it as a wake-up call, to which, of course, I say, really, a wake-up call? You guys are making processors into a market that is going connected and mobile, and you can't have this stuff built into your processors without one of your customers telling you they need this?
Yeah, isn't that a bizarre thing?
It's bizarre. There's just something wrong with Intel. I can't put my finger on it.
Well, in my opinion, I think a lot of these manufacturers, Intel and AMD, have kind of given up on the performance, and I think they're going into mobility, and that's really where the attention is, right? Most people do not need a higher end CPU like me. Most people are fine with an i3, and they get it, and they're happy on their laptop, and they have no idea what's happening in the back end.
Right. Certainly, performance on these devices and computers and so forth has gotten to the point where specific clock speeds are no longer all that important. For
everyday tasks, Paul, my i7 and an i3 probably will do very close results.
With the exception of things like ripping DVDs and whatnot.
Yeah.
Until very recently, all of my computers were Core 2 Duo, or in one case a Core 2 Quad. But they were two generations old, and they're fine. They work fine. I finally got a laptop that has an iCore 5 in it, and it just doesn't. I just don't see the benefit of it. It's not worse, but it's here it is, 2 generations newer. There's always these facts and figures about how much faster it is. It's 117% faster at this kind of thing, or 125% faster at this than the thing I was previously using. And what I can tell you is, battery life is fine, but it's not dramatically better than anything I had before. The performance is fine, but it's not dramatically better than anything I had before. And I just think that's where we're at with computing, personal computing. Performance.
I'm the exception here, and most 99% of the population is not doing what I'm doing, but 10% for me is a huge difference. When I was on the AMD, and it's a 6-core. It's a 6-core, 3.4 gigahertz 6-core. I can't do what I'm doing now because we up the video. You're coming in at high def. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 cameras set up. I couldn't do that. I would max out. So when I went to this, and it's less cores, but Intel, for whatever reason, they have that the threading stuff. So pretty much it makes it look like it's duplicated the way it's doing the threading.
They're pretend cores.
It's pretend cores. They do really well, and these CPUs are able to handle whatever I throw at it. I mean, I could do high def right now if I wanted to. And we were doing some tests a couple of weeks ago where we actually flipped the switch and went all HD. The issue was the hard drive couldn't keep up.
Yeah.
And it was just causing, the pressure to go on the CPU, and it was just going crazy at that point. But the potential for me to do high definition video on a computer that's $1,000 is mind blowing. When AMD would pretty much cost me the same thing, and I can't do half of what I'm doing now. And I think that's the problem with AMD. I think they just don't know what to do at this point.
We have no good choices.
We don't.
I'm hearing.
We don't know, but I do feel that a lot of these people have gone to mobile processing and the mobile game, and it's more important for them to have a CPU and a video card in one.
I'm going to get the details of this wrong, but Intel has always had a problem with the mobile stuff. Back when the original tablet PCs came out, one of the big complaints back then, the performance was terrible, the battery life was awful. It was these Intel chips. Intel used to take its desktop chips and just put them into laptops, basically. And there was a group out of Israel that came up, I think, with the original generation of the Core processors, what became the Core Duo, and then eventually the Core 2 Duo.
Yeah.
Or Core Solo, I think was one of the first ones too, but whatever. But it was a new it was a new processor, a new way of making processors, a new processor design. It wasn't even Intel, it was Intel again. We're caught flat-footed. But this part of the company that no one even knows existed over in Israel has solved this problem. That here we are in California with no clue what's going on in the market we're selling to.
Yeah. And
so they redid everything. And now, we have these processors all based on latter versions of that technology. And yet, Apple went to Intel and said, we switched to you and you're not really doing a good job with the mobile stuff. You know how important this is. We want to make these really thin and really light computers. Hello. A little wake-up call. And then Intel invents this thing called an Ultrabook, which, of course, is inspired or copied from Apple's MacBook Air, which is of course the computer that Apple was complaining about. We need to be able to have these capabilities in this kind of device. And why are we stuck with these buffoons? I don't understand why. This is why Microsoft is switching to ARM or adding ARM to the list of things you can do.
But isn't ARM pretty much the old Intel technology?
No, but taken by other companies and turned into something special. Okay. I mean, it's not it's again, processing is less important now for general computing, but you're not going to have a high-end gaming PC based on an ARM chip, but for these tablets and low-end lightweight computers, it gets better battery life and it gives good enough performance, I guess is the way I would say. Better than Atom, certainly. Which is another thing I can't stand about Intel. There's the deal with this chip that is like incapable of playing back a video that's attached to the screen of the computer it's in.
Yeah.
They sell these things in netbooks, and you can't even play a video full screen without things stuttering along. I don't understand this.
I think it's all, I don't even know. I have no answer. I don't know
either.
Why don't we talk about the Microsoft blog?
I'm not done ranting about Intel.
Okay, please continue. Please continue, Paul. What else? What else is bothering you?
No, I'm just kidding. All right, what's going on? What was it?
Where are we now? Microsoft launches a Windows 8 blog.
Yeah.
A lot of people are talking about this, and I think it's great. They're showing, past designs and ideas that they've had, and they're keeping you connected to what's happening. I would not.
See. I mean.
You feel that a lot of stuff is going to be held out?
Well, it's early, right? It's pre-build, so we'll see what comes out of this. Anything they say it's like dangling food above a starving crowd. We're all jumping for it and dying to find out. We analyze every sentence for any particular clue about anything. And so far, there's a lot of text, but not a lot of content. So we'll see what comes out of that. I can't wait. I mean, I'm very, very interested in the Windows 8 stuff on a number of levels. Dying to know more. Obviously, the Build conference is coming in about a month, and we'll know everything then.
What do you think the biggest news will be from Build? Do you feel that there's going to be one thing that they're going to tell us that we don't know?
Well, there are two things that I think are super important. One is whether Windows 8 is anything more than Windows 7 plus a new start screen.
Okay.
They keep talking about how it's a reimagining of Windows or a reinvention of Windows. Is it really? Is it a new thing, really? It needs to be a new thing, really. I think I'm nervous that that's all there is.
How much? But can it really be a new thing when they're still using? They have legacy and they have
Well,
registry
yeah,
still.
sure. I mean, that's still there. I mean, that will be
Yeah.
there. I shouldn't say always be there, but it will be there. So that's okay. Yeah, you have to support the backwards compatibility stuff. I get that, but I think that the world's changing, and I think they need to address it. And they're giving indications that that's where they're headed. I just don't know if they're capable of making that big of a leap. So,
Are you talking about the overall look? Like, are you saying that
I mean, the whole user
the whole
experience, not just
user
the way
experience.
it looks, but
Yeah.
the way it works.
Okay.
The whole experience.
See,
That's
to
a
me,
big deal.
To me, and this is where the problem lies, and I think this is why they won't be leaping into this.
Yeah.
The user experience of what we've seen so far with the tiles is beautiful, and I would love to use this on my laptop.
Yep.
But they have to still provide something for the other side of this where, I'm running all these softwares that will probably never work with anything like this and will not work in a UI like this. What do they do? What happens when it's someone like that where your software, your specific software will never be able to adapt to this environment?
Well, because that stuff, it still runs, right? And you'll
Yeah.
still have a keyboard and a mouse, and it will still work. I don't think that's going to be a problem. They're going to be people are very picky, and it's funny how they latch on to certain things. A couple of months ago when Steven Sinofsky appeared at that D9 conference, they eventually released the full video, and I was able to step through everything that he talked about. And one of the questions was, well, can you turn this off? And he said no. And people freaked out about that.
But you can't.
I don't
But you
want
can't.
this thing,
But you can't turn it off.
Yeah. So
That's the
I
thing.
think-
I don't know. I think people jump the gun way too early. We don't even know what the hell's going on with it, right? I've been getting emails constantly. Every time we do a show, Paul, I get an email, somebody saying how they hate Windows 8. They think it's horrible, and they're never going to use it. They're going to stick with 7. And I'm thinking, nobody
People have
has
big
seen this thing
opinions
in
about
action.
something they've ever used.
Nobody has used this thing. We have not seen it in full action. We've just seen this demo.
I like what I've seen a lot.
I do too.
I'm
too.
nervous that that's all there is.
You just think that it's like,
It
Just
needs to be like that.
yeah. Well, I that's another thing, right? Are we just gonna have this as our home screen, and then every time you open up an application, it just goes back to classic mode? Is that another thing that we will see? What if the application doesn't want to work in this?
There's
UI?
well, actually, that was the second thing. So the other half of this equation is the developer side. There was a moment roughly 8 years ago when Microsoft had their developer conference at the time, PDC, and they talked about what they called Longhorn, which became Windows Vista, of course. It's very exciting. They had a lot of really exciting ideas.
I remember
UI.
that. Yeah.
It was the absolute apex of Microsoft's influence. It was unbelievable. It was an exciting time. It's hard to even conceptualize this now, but they were going to destroy Apple. It was just the end of it. They won.
I remember the first time I saw the images of what Longhorn was going to be.
Yeah.
And, Vista did become Longhorn, but
This is nothing like Longhorn.
This is nothing like it. And it was actually very, we brought it up before, revolutionary. It was a big step from XP.
Yeah, I mean, it's important for people to remember that as awful as they think Vista was, the reason Vista was awful to some degree is because it didn't meet the expectations of Longhorn. But those expectations were unrealistic. Microsoft did completely rejigger the foundation of Windows. It was a monumental undertaking. They replaced the UI with something that has glass in it or whatever, so it looks different. But
by the way, Paul, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but on the Windows Vista Wikipedia, your name comes up.
Yeah.
Built 5048. It says, enthusiast Paul Thurrott writes, my thoughts are not positive at all. Yeah. This is a painful build to have to deal with after a year of waiting, a step back in some way.
Yeah. Well, what we didn't understand until years later was that thing they showed us at PDC in 2003 wasn't real. It wasn't running code.
What was the build?
It was it was like a director demo. It was fake.
I'm trying to find it right now, and I forgot what they had a build number to it, right?
No, not that first one. What happened was they gave us a build at that time that was not what they showed, And it was, I mean, talk about night and day. Here's this beautiful thing on the screen. Oh, and by the way, this looks nothing like the thing we gave you, but this is where we're going. And then you loaded up the actual build and you were like, wow, this looks like crap. What is this? It should have been the first indication that something was wrong, but we were so wrapped up in the excitement of it that we would have believed anything at that time.
I'm trying to find the video of it. I wonder if it's on YouTube.
So what you should look for is Longhorn rock video.
Okay, let me look at this. Longhorn rock.
It came out to the music from Overseer, Horn Dog, and
yes. Now I remember. With the girl, there was a girl, right?
It was great. It was we are geeks bearing gifts.
Yeah, I'm looking at this. Leno's there. It shows a picture of Leno. Yeah, it was.
Well, it was the history of the PC, and then they launched into here's what we've done, and now here's what we're going to do next. And it was like, oh my god, this is so exciting,
So what fell apart?
Everything fell apart. So the problem for Longhorn was that it was too big of a project. It was what was happening was that many different teams were working on their little bits in isolation from each other, and that when they actually went to put it all together, it didn't work. And they basically had to just start over from scratch, which is what they did. There was an ugly meeting internally at Microsoft that we found out about publicly years later, where Jim Alchin said we need to just scrap everything we've done and start over. And Bill Gates told them to do it, and they did. And what came out of that was Vista, but they dropped a lot of the big ideals and ideas that were behind Longhorn. This database-backed file system, this central location for notifications that was going to get all. Today applications can notify you of things in hundreds of different ways. Some of them do them in the app, some of them do them in the tray, some of them do them through the icon. They pop-ups, and they were going to centralize all that stuff and have one system. There was a lot of really neat stuff that was going to make up Longhorn.
I'm looking at the video.
I can't even anymore remember why we're talking about Longhorn. Oh, the reason we're talking about Longhorn, by the way, is because that moment in 2003 was also the moment where developers stopped following Microsoft and doing everything they said. It was the moment where developers just stopped doing it. They introduced things at the time. They called them Avalon and XAML and all that stuff. That stuff became, well, actually we still have XAML, but Windows, of course Microsoft, they destroy everything by giving them awful names like Windows Presentation Foundation, Windows Communication Foundation, and all those technologies that came out of that. They further forked it later. They have Silverlight is sort of the bastard stepchild of WPF, and started as this sort of Adobe Flash ripoff of the web, but is in fact a full .NET platform that now does all this crazy stuff and is in fact the basis for Windows Phone and yada yada.
Yeah, and it's great actually. Silverlight is. I actually hope that many other streaming sites do start implementing Silverlight.
Yeah,
ESPN has done great with it.
But anyone will tell you this, and I went to that developer boot camp a few weeks ago. One thing we all agreed on was people have different opinions about programming languages and programming frameworks and all that stuff, but Microsoft's programming developer tools, Visual Studio and so forth, by far the best anywhere. The problem is they don't have that, very high percentage of all developers in the world just doing what they want to do. And part of the reason isn't just that Longhorn was a disaster. I mean, part of it's simply that the world has moved on. Web apps have become more capable and powerful. People are moving to mobile devices. People are not making new major Windows native applications anymore. So it doesn't matter that all these capabilities are available in Windows Presentation Foundation or Silverlight or whatever. That's not where the users are. That's not where the developers are. So Longhorn, that PDC was sort of a milestone, a big one and a bad one. We didn't know it at the time, but it was like the beginning of the end.
Yeah. Well, I guess this is their, return back to that, right? I could see how they're trying to. Well, I really hope that this is good. I really, really hope this is good.
Tell me about it. I have so much writing on this now.
You got a book writing on it.
Yeah, so I'm right. So I'm working on this book with Rafael Rivera, and the conversations we have go along the lines of something like this. Like, what if I'll throw things at him? Like, what if Windows 8 is just Windows 7 with a new start screen? I mean, effectively, what if that's it? Do we still write the book? I mean, do we just give up?
Yeah.
I mean, that's stupid. If that's all it is.
But it can't be though, Paul, because Windows 7 is but it can. I mean, it can, but in reality, Windows 7 is what Windows XP should have been after it fell apart from Longhorn. Like it's a weird way.
But there are no big, Windows 95 was about 32 bits and making Windows beautiful, I guess. Windows XP was about combining the 9X and the NT code bases into a single
Paul,
product.
what was Windows ME about?
Windows ME was Windows 2000 wasn't what XP became,
Yeah.
so we need to have another consumer release, and here we are. And by the way, for whatever people dump on Windows ME, but there were several crucial technologies that were first tried out in Windows ME to great success. It later became a bigger deal in Windows XP and beyond, including such things as System Restore, the integrated media player, but also I forget what it's called, but it's the ability of a drive. Like if you would install a bad driver in Windows 9X, like Windows 98 or 95, display driver, and you had to reboot the computer, and it scrambled something, and you couldn't, the computer booted, but you couldn't see anything, you were screwed. You had to reinstall Windows. There was no way out of that. Driver rollback. Windows Me had driver rollback, which is now a very common feature in Windows. It works today. It's still there. But Windows Me was the first version. And it was there. So, yeah, it was based on DOS and all that stuff. But, there was some pretty good technologies in there, too.
I mean, if we look back at anything now, we're going to say it was awful, right? I tell people all the time, I'm like, I can't use XP. I can't
Windows,
use it after
Me launch
Ryan.
event was awful.
Yeah.
It was, Bill Nye the Science Guy. It was terrible.
Awful.
Terrible.
But I mean, I'm looking at the screen now, and this is totally innovative.
What are you looking at?
I'm looking at the Windows 8 image. With the store and the tiles.
It's beautiful. So
it's beautiful.
The question is that thing, and are the apps that run on that thing, are they going to be HTML5, which is HTML plus JavaScript plus CSS, or is it going to be that and/or Silverlight and some other stuff? And
we still don't know what they're going to be.
no, this is the other half of the equation.
I thought they were HTML5.
That's what they've said.
Yeah, but who knows?
But there's still millions of people that develop for this other Microsoft stuff, and like I said, a lot of developers have kind of abandoned that stuff to move to the web and to other technologies. For the people who have stuck around, their most loyal developer customers, what's the message? Hey, thank you for backing Silverlight. That was kind of a dead end. Just kidding.
Yeah.
But
here's this new thing.
What do you feel about JavaScript? It's kind of a tough message. You know what I mean? It's just as the crowd just kind of goes silent and the cricket chirps in the background. I don't know. We'll see.
I don't know. I still feel that. Just give me. You know what I want, Microsoft, and if you're listening, I know Paul's here, and I know you love Paul.
Well,
sometimes.
yes.
I just want you to give me a browser and give me this UI and this mini OS feel in the Xbox. That's what I want from you.
So that UI is coming to the Xbox.
I know. But I want it to work.
Oh, you want it to work.
I want it to work.
So apparently you're not familiar with Microsoft. No,
Yeah.
I'm sure it'll be fine. I mean, I guess what I'm saying is it's going to be fine. The problem is if it's not truly innovative and revolutionary and more wide-reaching than, oh, look, there's a start screen, then I think that this kind of migration away from traditional PCs and toward mobile devices simply accelerates. The world is hinging on this event. We find out what happens in Windows 8. And if they don't hit this home run, then I think a lot of people who are sitting there on the edge of the seat are going to say, okay, it's time to buy an iPad.
Yeah.
I give up.
You think people are going to do that?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
We'll see what
That's
happens.
fascinating.
I think we're on the it is the Longhorn thing in a way.
Yeah.
And we know what happened that time. Different people in charge.
Yeah, I was about to say there's different people in different times and much more.
I hate to say absolute faith. I'm not an acolyte of the guy, but I know that Steven Sinofsky, the guy who runs Windows right now, is extremely capable, engineering minded, very particular about things, and definitely the right guy. If he can't do this, no one can.
Yeah.
So, we'll see.
With that said, Paul, time to wrap it up.
Yeah.
Thank you, Paul. You can visit Paul's site, WinSuperSite. I just tweeted a blog of yours today.
Okay.
But, I'm going to WinSuperSite now. Let's see what's up on there right now.
By the way, while we were talking, I installed Lion 7 point whatever it's called.
I heard the restart.
Yeah, and it was like the quickest, smallest thing in the world.
I actually have it popped up. I'm about to do it once we log off. Your latest blog, Internet Explorer 9, the safest browser. I actually had that in the notes, and I saved it for Friday's show.
Okay. Oh, it's
But
fine. I don't.
yeah, but I do. That is interesting. That is an interesting blog. And then you have what did I tweet today? God, I forgot what I tweeted. Do you know what I tweeted?
I did see you in there somewhere.
I tweeted something. Let's see here.
I don't have my own site up.
God, I don't even know. I tweeted something.
What's my
Oh,
URL?
no, that's not it either. I have no idea what I tweeted.
Was it
Oh,
Microsoft Reader?
No, it was Google, the Google Motorola deal. Your blog on the Google.
Restored to the smartphone market.
Yeah.
You know, I can't look at that title and not think of that Star Wars Phantom Menace movie about how they're going to return balance to the Force.
Unfortunately, the balance will never come. I'm sorry to tell you, Paul.
It's all about the midichlorians.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
But you can visit Paul's site, winsupersite.com. Follow Paul on Twitter @therot. You could also check out What the Tech. We'll be on our website at gfqnetwork.com. You can also watch live every Tuesday, except for next week. We're off next week because Paul's off doing busy things.
I'm going out to San Francisco.
Which I'm on vacation too next week, so I'm off next week. And the week after, I believe we're going to do it on Friday, right?
Yeah, because I'm going to be away for 10 days.
So we'll be off next week. The week after, and 2 weeks from now, I guess we'll be on Friday. But we'll keep you posted on our website at gfqnetwork.com. And we'll see you all next time on What the Tech.